Yeah. Beautiful day out, and we have an exciting schedule ahead of us. We still have some people trickling in. While people are coming in, we'd love to hear a little bit more from all of you guys. Where are you calling in from? So if you could just put in city, country, wherever you're listening, if it's on social media, on LinkedIn, YouTube, here on the Crowdcast platform, please put it in the comments so we get a bit of an idea. While we're up to that, what we're going to do today is we're going to be building in public. We're going to talk about how you can use an AI agent to build workflows, integrate with the tools you use, and build something practical. So basically, at the end of today, after the session, you could try and do something on your own and have something valuable before the day is over. That's the promise that we will deliver to you. At least we'll try. But we have some people calling in from Germany, Gothenburg, London, Sweden, Iceland, Stockholm, Uppsala. Like this, it's a fun crowd. And for all of you who are listening, because this is a building in public session, you can type in whatever you would like to see us build. Bring your own problem. Explain to us what it is that you think would be valuable for you to be able to automate or build or save time with. And we will actually look over the real comments and take that up and work on it with you guys here. We might even invite some of you to join the stage if it makes sense. That being said, my name is Kristjan. I'm the co-founder and CEO at 50 Skills, and we're helping employers to map up their processes with AI and run them in an organized way, making it easy for you to take governance of control of your own processes. We're focusing specifically on HR and ops teams who are building people processes, so a process where people go through them. So any type of employer request, onboarding people. Like whenever you start to onboard people, everything that happens while they're an employee and until they leave, we're specializing in those types of workflows. And with us today, we have Thomas Eklöf as well, who is here from the HR community in Sweden, HR for AI. And Thomas has been doing some incredible things. We've both met in our office in Iceland and at multiple places in Sweden. And I'm very excited about what you've been teaching, what you've been working about. And before I kind of go into the building part with you, Thomas, bringing up the use cases and really picking at whatever you see, I'd like to give the floor to you and maybe give all of us a bit of an understanding of what you consider to be an agent and an agentic workflow and those sorts of things. So I guess over to you while we have the audience waiting.
Thanks, Kristjan. Yeah, I mean, it was fun. Our first trip was to Iceland in January, and then I thought it would be fun to meet up in person again, since it's not too often we get the chance to meet IRL. So it was great seeing you there, and I think your product is really super interesting. So that's why it's always exciting to really show the audience, show people how actually easy it is. So I'm hoping that you are able to kind of bring in your ideas to today's session, because I think it's really valuable if people have some ideas what they're thinking about at this time. It could be something easy, it could be an entire onboarding flow, you name it, you think it, and yes, type it in, and then we'll see how it goes. And hopefully we put a Kristjan to the test today. Otherwise, I will just ramble on from my point of view. But before I begin with the intro, I just want to a little bit about myself. As you mentioned, I run AI for HR and been working with HR the last 15 years or so. So kind of the red thread through my whole career really is kind of modernizing or moving the needle forward. Focus on HR mostly, but nowadays more and more into AI and how AI technology can be used for HR, but also pretty much any domain. So now I'm actually moving more and more away from HR, more into organizational development in general, because AI, I think, will be an integrated part of all our lives more and more the coming years. So it's really an interesting time. And I'm also kind of, since I've been working with this the last 3 years, mostly hosting trainings and courses, I've been really digging deeper into one of the main issues, which is not new really to AI in that sense. I've been working with a lot of different implementations, and most of the times you focus a lot on building solution, and then when you're ready to deploy, you kind of sigh and then you leave it off to someone else to continue the adoption. And I think that's really a pain point. I've been figuring out how to improve that. The last year, I've been working on a startup, a new idea that's still in the beta phases, but we are developing something to assist in that adoption phase, really how to get started. So not so much in the basics, but really when we need to get started using new things. So I'll share a bit more about that, but that's really my main focus.
Awesome.
So I'm hoping we have a big discussion. And if you have any questions, feel free. We try to answer them as we go throughout today's session. I'm going to share my screen and then let's just get started with some kind of introductory. So this is not going to be a large um, course where I talk about what AI is and isn't. But to kind of set the frame for what we are going to show, I just wanted to give the audience some perspectives that I think will be valuable coming into when we get the hands-on session with 50 Skills tool. So the kind of theming of this is from chatbots to AI agents, right? And when we begin, most of us, I'm guessing, I'm pretty confident that all of us have actually used AI quite some time. Otherwise, probably wouldn't be interested in this webinar, right? So what we probably have been doing is using any chatbot, most likely ChatGPT, or if you're doing it in your line of work, probably Copilot might be your choice, or not, maybe not your choice, but your organization's choice. So you've been definitely working with your large language model, which is kind of the engine behind everything, right? So you have an input, the model itself make calculations and gives you a result. So it's really you are in control of whatever the chatbot will give you. And we moving along this journey and into kind of how we will use AI in our line of work. We are moving more into what I would say is more of a workflow way, which is will be powered more and more with AI. So it's still that we have kind of predefined steps. We have our input, but this time we probably equipped our large language model with different tooling. So it could call for your email, or it could call for a sales system, or Excel, or whatever kind of tool you have in place in your organization, and collect information from that, and then it will provide you with results. And here we're still pretty kind of deterministic. We give the input, it provides structured information back to you and gives you some kind of result to continue to work from. And the biggest difference, I would say, when we talk about agents, is that it actually shifts already from the beginning. Instead, just prompting or giving instructions, the main thing is we instead try to give it a goal, kind of where we're heading with this idea, and then we leave it to the agent itself to kind of figure it out. So there is a loop called the react, which is really reason, act, and iterate. So this is what an agent is more capable of going a lot further. So it's less deterministic and more into searching and finding out, making decisions and testing different variations, and then in the end coming back with the results. Again, this is also a kind of a loop as well. So we might give it a goal, it might give us something, search for information and provide, but then again, we need to iterate and evaluate and continue. But the main difference between workflow is we're still giving the input, it's quite deterministic. With an agent, we're more setting the goals and having a freer framing for the agent to work under. I like this. This is something I stole from you, Kristjan. And I think since your tool is more into automation as well, and not only creating AI agents, or more or less an automation tool, like, I don't know, people heard about Zapier or Make or N10, these type of tools that makes automations inside companies. So I really like this slide that you gave us before, and it kind of highlights what the differences are. So here, the first step would be a new hire, same process over our course. We have new hire, the automation sends the email automatically into, and then feedback perhaps back to an HR systems. When we have an AI workflow, it's still deterministic. So we still set kind of the guidelines along the road, how it should behave, what it should say, how it should say it, etc., etc. So the AI workflow is really we are doing it in a more complicated manner where we add AI in different variations. And the final step is really, okay, we have new hire, and then we give the AI agent a goal to help us assimilate or onboard kind of the new hire in any way it may seem fit. Of course, again, the kind of the instructions and how to do this you need to set up as well. But the idea is really to give the agent more freedom into making the decisions. So hopefully that will make a little more sense when we dive in into the kind of when you show us how it's done in reality.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So some examples I'm curious is recruitment. I mean, I think this is something most people are interested in, especially screening candidates. Now we see candidates are producing CVs with AI as never before. So how do we kind of adapt to that reality? And I think AI, of course, will help us. It's a bit of a catch-22 though, because the at least in Europe, the new EU's AI Act will help us, or probably won't help us in that scenario, but I think it's very important that we understand how this model work and how they evaluate. So I'm not sure we completely can dive into AI screening for us, but more perhaps in a deterministic way when we really can understand why it's making the decisions it's making. But otherwise, onboarding, I know it's one of your most popular themes, right? So plenty of things, and I would more interested into kind of looking more specific examples rather. So if we take it smaller steps, then large chunk, I think is easier to show how it works. And it could be any other process. I mean, last time I did a demo with Fifth Skills, I did like a product feedback analyzer. So it doesn't have to be within HR, it could be anything else really. So I'm hoping you have some interesting ideas that you are thinking about at this time and give Christian a good sense. But before we do that, just wanna watch out for four mistakes, I think, especially within AI adoption. And it's really what we're talking about with onboarding. If we put a big onboarding process, the likelihood that it's going to fail or it's going to break is higher if we aren't really well defined in the beginning. So I would rather always try to find the smaller projects that are more feasible, more doable, and just continue building over time. It's really a great way of having a goal that we need to create the best onboarding experience, but to do that, kind of define each product along the way to increase an incremental change over time. And of course, human in the loop, that's really critical that AI doesn't really make the decisions for us. We need to be in charge, and you need to really be aware of, especially automation bias. I don't know if you heard about that, Christian.
Absolutely.
I think it comes from like within the aviation industry, right? That for many, how many years has been AI flying planes? It's like 40 years, something. uh, so I think it's important to know that when we use more and more AI, the term automation bias means really that we are less inclined to intervene and more inclined to trust AI. So I think we need to have a structure in place to mitigate those risks. Um, and finally, like too often I see that there's no real structured plan to drive adoption. So I think this is really critical to be successful. Oh, oops.
Oh,
I'm
sorry. There's
sharing the
uh,
screen.
yeah, it seems like the screen sharing went off there. One second. Does it work now on your end?
It's empty.
Okay, I think you might need to share the screen again, Thomas, there in the end. Sorry.
Sorry, one or two slides left. So.
No worries. No, but great point. I mean, I think your intro, yeah, if you just kind of,
No, no,
uh,
no. Continue. What did you say?
no, I was just saying, I absolutely agree with you. I think the structure you're bringing out here was just like the difference between a deterministic workflow and a probabilistic and how they kind of work together. It's a great intro. And these mistakes are classical. Like people are starting to do too much, in the beginning without kind of just making small successes and bringing more things on top of that. So it's a great segue into the next chapter.
Yeah, I think it's about building capabilities, really. We need to learn how we conduct different AI projects and learn over time and improve continuously. So it's not a big launch. And I think this is my kind of question to you guys. I mean, you probably most heard or you've been a part of an organization who, okay, early on with generative AI coming in, let's buy licenses to Copilot, to ChatGPT, or whatever tool you chose. And then quickly realizing that no matter how many licenses you provide, the results really won't come out of it. I mean, we of course we will see some productivity gains, especially from an individual level, but kind of the structure improvements doesn't really show. So without a proper way of conducting this type of experiments, the risks are quite high that we will not succeed with the behavior change that we need to implement. So this is really what we're trying to build. And at the moment, I'm at assignments with Save the Children and helping them with their AI strategy. And they're also one of the few clients that are testing our tool now. So hopefully for the fall, we are looking to add additional clients to improve the product and then hopefully launching by the end of the year, actually. So now let's go back into kind of you showing us how it's done. So please write in the comments or the Q&A section if you have an idea. Raise your hand if you have something. I really want us to push Kristjan to the max. All right.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Thomas. So like Thomas mentioned, like in the comments, anything you'd like to see, anything you're wondering about building, any type of problem you currently have, if you share it with us, we can take it up here and we can literally build it in front of you right now. That being said, we're going to start with a few examples so you get an idea of what it is that we're building in and how it works. So I'll be sharing my screen through the majority of the session that remains to just show you live how these things work. And one of the things I wanted to start with is just to show you one example of a simple workflow here, so you get an idea of how this could work. So just imagine that you are an employee and you might have access to something like a Claude or a ChatGPT or a Copilot at work. And you just realized that your company offers something like health benefits. So you could basically go in here and say, hey, you offer health benefits. I just bought, a gym membership or something, gym membership card. Can I get it reimbursed? You can put something like this into the AI, or you can fill out a form on a portal that does the same thing. So you basically say, hey, I just bought a gym membership card and I know that my company sponsors that. So I'm just going to kind of take, I don't know, 948 euro receipt here for something in Berlin. And you fill this form out. And what happens when you fill the form out is that you got added here to a process. And so this individual got added to a process. The workflow is deterministic, so it's checking what kind of benefits is this person asking about. It's asking for a gym membership. And because it's asking for a gym membership, it continues forward to the next action. In this case, it's an AI agent who is in the workflow. And the AI agent has a task, which is to check, if I zoom in here, if this particular receipt is legitimate or not. Does the amount fit whatever we have? It runs a certain prompt, just like you could do in ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. And it comes to the conclusion that it is indeed a legitimate receipt for a certain amount. And because it believes that's the case, you can have the next step after it say, okay, whenever somebody uploads this receipt, if it's legitimate, we should email the financial team to let them know that they should pay this person back. And we should also email the person that just filled this out that says, hey, congrats, this has been approved. So a really basic workflow, it just explains the concept. And so the point here is you can end up with a ton of processes, as many as you'd like. And each process can have its own detailed overview of how it works and when it works and why it works. And you can see all the people who've been added through these processes. And you can click any of them and you can see exactly how they travel through the process and what happened. So that's the governance part. Now, that being said, how do you actually build this stuff? It looks complicated. Like, what can we do with it? What makes sense? And I'll walk you through a couple of use cases later on, like onboarding, offboarding, employee requests, whatever you want me to build with you guys. But first, I want to show you how easy it is to build. So there are two ways you can build. If I just take here Thomas' example, and you can just create a new workflow like this, and you can start to drag and drop stuff into the workflow. It's like, I want to send someone an email, and after the email is sent, I want to do something else. But that can take some time. Like, how do you actually use this platform, and how do you do this thing? The other option is just to talk with an AI agent and ask the agent to build whatever it is that you have in mind. And when you use this agent to build stuff, you can start with super simple prompts, like just build me an onboarding process. Or you can give it more context and say stuff like, hey, build me an onboarding process for mid-sized company in Sweden. We're 200 people, new people, they typically start on a Monday. So you're giving it more context. And the more context you give it, the better the results will be. So if you give it something like this, it will do an interesting result. Like if I just go back here into the journey builder here, I put it in here and I click on go. And when you do that, the agent is now in what's called planning mode. And planning mode means that it's sort of trying to understand what you're asking it about. So this is very similar for those of you who are familiar with Claude Code. It has a planning mode and has an agent mode. And now it's asking you clarifying questions to make sure that whatever you're asking, like that it's on track with it. So now it's like, do you want to like manually add people or add them from new hire? Or do you want them to like fill out a manager fills out a form with details or whatever you want really. And you can just kind of continue here and decide what should happen next and next and next and next. And it will take into account if you already have any integrations in the account or not, like what it should do. But based on whatever I picked there, it was sort of just random options that I picked. Based on whatever you will pick, it will then come up with a plan that it believes is logical for you. And based on that plan, it will then go into building mode and build out the entire workflow for you. And so right now, let's just give it a couple of seconds while it's doing this. And then we'll see it come up with a proposed plan that we can put into action. Now, while this is loading, I want to trigger off this one other thing that I think would be interesting, which is how do you actually get it to do something way more advanced than this? Sorry about this one. Something way more advanced than this. And what you can do there is that you can go and you can take a prompt that's way more detailed, super advanced prompt. It might be 10, 12, 14 pages in length that really goes into the detail of what should get built. And you might be thinking, well, nobody really has the time to write down all of this when you're building something. But the reality is that if I just open this up, build a new workflow, just call it advanced here, and we'll just put the prompt in and just go for building right away. The reality is the way you can get these sort of prompts going is if you have a conversation with your teammates. Let's say you just sit down at a table and you have a conversation and you record the conversation just on your phone, just put on a recording with voice. And it could be a 30-minute conversation. But once the conversation is over, what you can do is that you can, if I just go here as an example, you can basically take that conversation and you can take the transcript, you can turn the transcript into a prompt, and you put that prompt into the system, and it will build out something pretty incredible based on what you put in there. So if I open up here again, what we've asked it to do, here's the first workflow we asked it to do, build a comprehensive one, and it now has the plan, and I just click build, and now it converted it from planning mode into building mode. And now it's going to build out this entire workflow based on the prompts that we put in. So in a few minutes, we'll actually have a complete workflow here that we can take a look at, which is an onboarding process for this this type of company. And once that's ready, we could actually start using it, or we could figure out what's wrong with it, what's missing, and we could continue iterating with it by talking to it or doing manual updates. So that's one way you can take an idea and you can bring it to life in a pretty quick method. Now, while all of this is loading, both the big one here that it's already starting to build the big one here, you can see. And while that's loading, as you can see here, if I just zoom out here, while this one is loading, I'm going to show you a couple of ready-made processes and have a dialogue with you, Thomas, because this might take us 5-10 minutes to get properly built, the large one here, and just show you kind of how this can be put to play in some practical workflows to run some of your automations. So the first,
we have a first suggestion actually. So from Angela, she wants to see the performance review.
Performance review, yeah, let's go for it. So we actually have here a ton of examples of ready-made processes. So if I go here and just type performance review, Let's just check it out here. I have a bunch of these examples here. Here's one for performance review. So let's say you have a workflow. Let's find a better one than this one here. I think I have a couple here. Performance review. Let's just take this one in. I think this was the one here. Yeah. So in this case, you might add somebody to a performance review by there's many ways. You can just bulk upload your entire employee number, or you could just add a person with their email name, the supervisor, and the supervisor email of that person. That's the only info you'd need to start something like this. And the first thing that will happen is that the employee will get a form sent where they are giving themselves an evaluation. As an example here, what achievements or outcome in the past year are you most proud of? And similar questions around executions, collaboration. So the employee is asked a ton of questions. Once that happens, an AI agent will basically review everything that they said, take a look at what was said there, and here's the prompt that's being used. The prompt is basically that you're going over an employee's reflection answers, and it's going to summarize the whole thing and put that summary into a document, what you might call evaluation summary. And so people fill this out, a whole evaluation will get sent, and once that's ready, a manager will also get an email to evaluate the employee. Similar questions. So now the employee and the manager have kind of given their own view on the same set of questions. Another agent will summarize all of this, create a summary. It will take a look at all the times that are available in the calendar for both the employee and the supervisor. It will find the AI will basically suggest the best times that are there based on a prompt that makes sense. Something like, don't suggest weekends, it should be at certain times, that kind of stuff. And it will then automatically pick the one that's best and schedule a meeting when they're both available in the next couple of weeks. So basically based on the prompt. So if you're an employee, if you're a supervisor, what happens is you get a form sent, you fill it out, you then get a meeting booked. Once the meeting is booked, you show up for the meeting. And in the meeting that you show up for, it's going to have information about what you should talk about based on what the AI suggested. So the experience is completely different. Now, after the meeting, the supervisor will be asked to basically list down agreements you made, those sorts of things. And again, this is only one example of how you could do this. You could put every single employee into a workflow like this. You would then see all of the people who've been added to the workflow in one place. And you would then basically have employee reviews on autopilot. But instead of the supervisor being, what am I supposed to do at this meeting? How am I supposed to plan? What makes sense here? The AI has been configured to basically take control of that part of the process.
And I think here, just to kind of stop by, because I think a lot of times people are worried about GDPR and safety and what happens. Can we utilize these agents? What is your, before I give my thoughts, how do you usually respond to that, would you say?
Yeah, so I mean, the thing is that whatever vendor you work with, whatever AI you get, there's a couple of things you should, of course, be mindful of. Where's this hosted? Is it hosted in Europe? Are you making sure that the AI is never trained on the data? There's zero data retention. There's a couple of checklists that you should have. In our case, it's all hosted in Europe, and all of these items apply. But even if that's the case, you just still wonder, what am I asking the AI to do? Am I asking the AI to automate a certain thing that's has huge impact on people's lives? Or is it something that I am just trying to amplify the work that I'm trying to do? So for example, if you have an AI agent taking a look at the availability in your calendar and the availability of the calendar of the employee and picking the date that makes the most sense and nothing else, that's great. It's huge value, right? If you are, however, automatically looking at what the employee is saying and the supervisor and making a firing decision or a promotional decision based on it without a human even taking a look at it, you're in the gray zone. So I think it's that sort of difference can show you when you can use it and how. The difference between using an AI and a determinate, in a workflow builder like the ones we're showing you here, is that you can click any box at any point. I can, now you're kind of just seeing what the AI has been building here with the builder on. But if I take an example here of something where an AI is being deployed, here, for example, you can take a look at every single person going through something. You can take a look at what the AI was asked to do, all the information it got, what it did, what it's suggesting, and why it's suggesting it. So you have full paper trail of where you're deploying AI, how you're deploying AI, what info the AI has access to, and what happens after the decision of the AI comes up next,
And I
which
think
is
this is really what I think is extra valuable with your tool, because I think most of the times we don't really know where all the data is going, and especially when we're trying to utilize AI in different ways. So I'm just trying to define, because what you're doing here really is the navigator is more of an AI agent really, and agents within a workflow are not really agents. They are only chatbots that are strictly controlled through one prompt to do one certain task. So it's really, you put a lot of these chatbots within a workflow, and then thus you created the AI workflow. But it's still quite deterministic. You're still really giving clear instructions what it should do, and then it's following certain steps, right?
Absolutely, but at the same time, it can still be. So I would say all the steps above here are 100% deterministic, and then the agent is probabilistic, because the agent, yes, it's like a chatbot in the sense that it has some instructions and it has some prompt inputs, but you can give it knowledge files and additional files. You can have it search the web. You can give it extra file searches here. You can even have integrations that feed it with more information. So when it's coming to a decision, it's doing it in a probabilistic nature, just like you would do with if you talk with an agent that you've given tool calling and that kind of stuff. So it's a probabilistic agent within a deterministic workflow. But this probabilistic agent, instead of, for example, when you talk with a chatbot and you just ask it to do stuff, it's doing it in the context of this being the step, and the inputs that it's getting is based on the steps above and all the info you want it to get. And that can be really valuable. So for example, in this agent, its only purpose is to write a welcome announcement using an AI. Like
And yeah,
it's like
but
it knows
does it know anything besides the instructions? I mean, nowadays you can have memory within AI agents, right? So it learns over time. Does these agents have that memory, or is it cleared?
you you could give it knowledge files or additional files or the ability to search
Do that, but
for
it
certain
doesn't know
things.
the entire context, right?
No, no, but you could, for example, have a Notion or something, and before a task is completed, it goes into a Notion file, it takes a look at everything in it,
Right.
puts it in the agent, and that Notion file can be updated. So it basically has memory. So you can do it that way. But I think like so for in some cases that makes sense. Like if you're telling a joke or something, like you have an agent telling a joke, you want to maybe have a list of all the jokes it's said before, so it's not doing the same thing over and over again. Like there's all
Yeah.
sorts of context
We
here.
had some questions actually regarding, I think two of them are in the same scope. So what happens with the data? Is it stored within 50 skills or the client's environment? And especially another is interested in showing the complex flow. So where is the connection with the HR system or payroll? And so kind of how does it work with the connecting systems, especially HRIS, and where does the data flow?
So the system itself, 50 Skills, is a product that's hosted in Europe and has all sorts of credentials, and you know we're basically trying to work at the highest standard in terms of security. So, but we're hosting data in our own platform. That being said, the data that we host in our own platform, the platform is designed to integrate with other tools. So when you're integrating with other tools like your HR systems or other things, you can decide if it's fetching information from that system or putting information in that system. You can decide if the workflow should delete data once the workflow has been completed. There's all sorts of ways around that. So you can pretty much customize those things in order with your needs. But most of our customers, they use the platform as a governance platform for the workflows they use to run it with. And all the people that go through those workflows, they use it to basically see the paper trail and what's going on there. And we have everything from like airlines to central banks to municipalities to fast growing companies using this in multiple countries. But if I show you an example of like a practical onboarding workflow that has been built, and the AI agent has already built a few, which we can take a quick look at later on. But let's say you have an onboarding workflow and you started by having a webhook with like your ATS. So you might be using like a Teamtailor or Recruity or whatever ATS you have in mind. And whenever you've kind of picked a person you want to hire, there's an integration between this tool and that tool. So the information from that individual goes into this workflow. When that happens, in this case, the first step is to basically ask the new employee about a bunch of information. Once you've asked them for a bunch of information, you can upload contracts into the system. So it can basically automate how an employment contract or an, any type of contract you have in mind, like stock options, NDAs, whatever you have in mind, could be created. Then you have it sent to e-signing with whatever tool you want. So DocuSign, GetAccept, whatever you think is relevant there. And once parties have signed it, all these other steps will trigger. And here, for example, you could create a task in your task management system. You could integrate this with your HRIS. So for example, here, when you create a user in Bamboo, Bamboo might ask for a bunch of information. One of them might be the email of the person you're hiring. And then you need to decide, when we're creating users in Bamboo or our HRIS, do we use the professional email that we just gave them as new hires? Or do we use the email they used when they applied for the job? So you can easily map which email do you want to use. Do you want to use the one when they applied, or some other email that IT or somebody else provided with them? If there are specific questions, like here, Bamboo, for whatever reason, is asking for the person's gender, like you can decide, because we asked for the gender in a form, then you can just map that into Bamboo and make sure it gets the same information. So you're mapping information from different sources, from when they applied for the job, for when they filled out a form, for when a supervisor did it, those sorts of things. And you can do that in any context. So here, for example, you might ask a manager to pick what tools they should get or fill out a form with it or whatever, hardware, software. And when the manager has filled that out, then you can have a system create a ticket in Jira or Asana or whatever you want. And that will include the choices that were made in the step above. So it this is all highly deterministic. That being said, the agent, the probabilistic agents, you can both have like an agent build this, update this, do changes to it, or you can have it build agents within this workflow. So you could have, for example, somebody's giving feedback here. Let's say here you have a feedback after the first few weeks. An employee is kind of getting, my onboarding process was great. It wasn't great, whatever the feedback is. You could have an agent that reviews this feedback right after. You can give it as detailed instructions as you want. You can decide what models they're using to do this. And if the feedback is, critical or not critical, you can do something else with it. So this is one way of like where you can put these agents, what you can make them do, how you can make them do it. And the benefit is really to see all the people who've gone through these processes. So you might have, 50 people, 200 people that have gone through a process. You can see exactly where they are in the process. If you click any of them, you can see all the steps that have been completed, green in color. And so you can easily kind of check what happened, when, where, why. And then if you feel that the workflow should be improved or updated, you can just update it. And then you can see basically the history of this workflow and how it's changed over time. So how it basically went from this current version that we had. Sorry if I just go into the builder here. This current version into like the last 38 instances of it. And if I'm completely honest, like the people that I'm seeing doing workflows proficiently, how they do it, how they actually become successful is that they start with something like this. They record a conversation of themselves with their teammates. They get a lot of context and they build something like this. But when they go over the workflow, like this is the prompt we put in earlier, when they go over it, they see something is missing because they forgot to mention something. They realize, it's not doing this and that. So they basically start improving the workflow here. And when the first person gets onboarded, they learn so much. There's so many things that could be tweaked a little bit better. Something was off here and there. And then they make improvements to it. So like version 5 or 6 of the workflow is actually the workflow that they end up being much happier with. And so I think, like you mentioned in the beginning, Thomas, like the key here is try and describe how you do things today, how you think you might want to do it in a better way, and get started with that as the first template. Then, as you learn with every single person going through these workflows, or after a couple of people have gone through them, you can take the feedback that they've been giving when they're going through this, that you feel when you're seeing this, that all the stakeholders are giving. I mean, you might be integrating this with your payroll and like managers and employees, like gather all of this. And you can do that autonomously. And then based on the feedback, you can literally just ask the agent to update the workflow. And it's incredible how much better it gets after just a few revisions like this. So that's one of the feedback things I'd like to share with the audience.
So we have one question, and then before you take the question, so someone wants to see an example of offboarding, exit surveys, exit combos. Could you
Yeah,
start an offboarding process for us? And while you do that, hopefully you can multitask. So
yeah,
one other question from Sally is, what is the logic behind MCP and how do we automate using
yeah,
MCP?
absolutely.
And yes, before you answer, I don't know if everyone's aware, but MCP is a new protocol developed actually by Anthropic, the developers behind Claude, which is kind of replacing or changing from previous what we've been working with for a long time, which is the API, right? So it's about sending information from one tool into another tool, and the MCP format is a different structure that it's supposed to be more lean, more efficient, and that's also been debated, but it's still increasing in popularity. So, okay, what is the logic behind your MCP and how we automate using
Yeah.
MCP?
So I'll show you how the MCP part work. Just before on the offboarding part, like there's so many ways that you can do offboarding, but offboarding is typically somebody is in a place where they're leaving the company. And it could be like you need to know somebody's is departing the company. Why are they leaving? Were they fired? Are they resigning? Are they going are they going into retirement? Are you going to replace someone after it? There's a lot of logical questions to ask when it comes to offboarding processes. And this particular example, if I kind of look into it, it's if informing stakeholders, it's deciding if it should find a replacement, how it should do that. It's doing the handover plan. Like somebody's leaving, who gets the handover? Why do they get the handover? What are the key contacts? And it's making sure to ask the person leaving about those things. There's a question of farewells. How do you actually, when somebody's leaving, do you inform it over email, team lunch? Like, how does that happen? Is there a virtual thing? Is there an event around it? So and depending on what kind of company you are, if you are a pizza place that has super high turnover of people joining and leaving every week, you might do this very differently than if you're a small company with 20 people and someone has been there for 10 years. So I think the personalization part is really key here. But this is one way that you can do it. And I also just urge people in general to have surveys as much as possible. Automated surveys are incredible because the people always forget to collect feedback, and just like exit interviews and sort of understanding why they're leaving, how they would describe the experience, this kind of stuff, like a month or week after people have left, when they really had time to digest it. People are often just truth sayers when it comes to this, and it can be super valuable for the company in terms of what they can do to improve moving forward, especially if the person left uh, voluntarily rather than involuntarily. So these are all things that you can kind of bear in mind. Now, we're always putting these templates online. So on our website, you can see a bunch of templates, and you can just click them and duplicate them into your own account. I think it's just 50skills.com/templates. But what's also interesting, what we're starting to see happening, is that people are going into the navigator and they're asking the navigator here, they're saying, could you please create a prompt that takes all the information from this workflow and turns it into a prompt that I can send to a friend so they can actually rebuild this entire workflow on their own account. And so you can put in a prompt like this, and this prompt will create a prompt in this navigator that you could share with a friend, and they could build the same workflow, which is sort of an interesting thing is about how people are sharing between in the communities with things. Now, that being said, MCP, Thomas, what's going on? So let's say you have a portal here with a ton of information, everything your employees are asking about. Like somebody wants to get something reimbursed, they're going on parental leave, they could fill these things out in the portal. You can just tell them there's a portal there. But what if people want to use an AI to talk with it? What if they just want to go into Claude and ask a question? How do you do that? Well, what you do is that you go into the product and you just go here. If I just skip this here, you go into settings and you go into MCP servers. And here you can just click, Thomas demo. And what you can do here in the Thomas demo here, you can add all the workflows you want. So you could have something like parental leave request. If you had one workflow for that, you could add it. And then you could start to say, okay, when people are asking about parental leave, you should point out to them that they can provide the information required in this workflow. And if they provide it, you can start the workflow just as if they had filled out a form. So you can give it these types of instructions. And if you save this, what you can then do, if I just show you an example here, you can connect this to third-party tools. So you will now have a URL to connect it with Claude, to Copilot, to other AI tools. And if you connect this with something like Claude, then it's usually a plus sign, and it's usually something called a connector. You can just kind of click it here. And when you have clicked this, that means that when you ask it a question, it will have that context, and it will check, okay, this person is now asking about parental leave. We now have a connector with this workflow. And you can add as many workflows to this MCP thing as you want. You can add all of your workflows or all of your public workflows. You could have one MCP server for all of your employees that anyone should have access to, which is typically the same stuff you'd show on on an employee portal, for example. Like anyone should be able to fill out, talk with an AI and get this filled out just like they could fill out the form. But for supervisors that are maybe able to let people go or have a hiring request or do disciplinary action or whatever it might be, you would have another MCP for them. So they might have 2 or 3, depending on what it is. So that's sort of the key with the MCP part.
We had another question. Is it possible to build in Copilot agents today, or do you need access to a tool like this to be able to perform workflows like you showed?
No, so you can go into, you can go into this tool to build out whatever workflows you want. So here you can go and build, if I just kind of go here, like you could go build onboarding, offboarding, parental leave, new hire buddy programs, like whatever you can think of. You could just go in there, ask the AI agent to build it, and you have a workflow. If you would like that workflow to be able to get triggered from Copilot, then what you do is that you just go into settings, MCP, you create an MCP server here, and you get this URL that you connect with Copilot. And then in Copilot, all of your employees for whatever category of people you want will have access to that. They'll be able to trigger these workflows to start. So they wouldn't have to log into this platform. They would just basically autonomously be filling out forms and triggering workflows that you have built and are governing in your own place. But they would have a pretty amazing experience because they would just like say, hey, I'm going on parental leave. And seconds later, they would get an email that says, hey, your parental leave has been confirmed. And there's all sorts of things that are going to trigger in the future, like months from now, they're going to get triggered with, how's it going? Is there anything that could be, anything we could help with? Are you, can you confirm the date that you're coming back? There's all sorts of things that can really be valuable.
But now, just to clarify, so when we use Copilot, you're using still within your license, or can we use our own kind of internal? So we use our own token costs, or because I'm guessing there is a token fee as well to.
Yeah. So currently, currently when you're using this tool, you're using the you're using the AI that's embedded into the tool. You can't currently add your own Copilot connection there. But there are ways that you can integrate your own Copilot as an action within a workflow. But what most of our users do, they just use the AI tools embedded into the tool already and pick the models from ChatGPT or Anthropic with Claude that they think makes the most sense.
All right. Cool. I see that our time is actually overdue, unfortunately.
Yeah,
do we have any final questions from the audience? I think I've catched most of them.
Yeah, I think I think for people who are also just still watching, just to kind of summarize this up, I think like it's free to try. It's free to try and play with it. But I think like whatever you're trying to build, I would just try and find that use case. Like really think about if you have certain benefits of automating something, like it could be onboarding, offboarding, employer requests, like whatever it is, take that use case and then say, okay, let me try and make a better version of this. And you try and find the tool that you think makes sense. You play with it, you make a small MVP out of it. And if that's the tool you want, then you can kind of commit to doing it in a more serious way. And like, to be honest, like the customers who are getting the most value, they're committing X amount of hours per week on this thing, right? They've built something and they know it works, they see the benefits, and then they go, okay, on a weekly basis, I'm going to maybe spend Fridays working on this, or before noon, twice a week. And they use that time to build something else, and they clearly see the benefits that come out of each that they build. And in 1 year, you'd be surprised of how many workflows you can build, automate, see the benefits. And that's really the one that that I encourage people to take a look at, the bigger picture. But the only way to do this is to take the time in describing how it's done today, how you think you want it to be, and that's how you get value. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you, guys. Have a great Wednesday afternoon.